So here we go, everybody. Welcome to another Meet the Oppo, the series where we get the lowdown on town's next opponent, which of course is away at Wycomne Wanderers at Adam Park. Today I'm joined by James, the man who covers all things Wycomne Wanderers for the BFP. James, thanks again for joining me once again. How are you?
Thank you for having me, Ross. Great as ever. And I'm doing good. Thank you. Doing good. Getting ready for another Wycombe game. Last one before Christmas. Bumper crowd as well, which I know we'll probably talk about. So I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it.
Yes, mate. We're speaking, of course, in the green room. We know it's going to be a cold afternoon at Adams Park because the temperature has completely dropped in the UK. So we're getting ready to wrap up warm for the final game before Christmas, as you said. Let's recap the season then for Wycombe so far. 9th in League One, 21 games played. So we are getting to the halfway point now. 8 wins, 5 draws, 8 defeats. You don't concede many, but you don't score many either. How would you recap the season so far?
I think the word that's been thrown around a lot is inconsistent. I think that's very fair to say. Wycombe have shown that they can really put out a good show and perform well, but there have been times where Wycombe have not turned up for several games. Case in point, there was a period in October where Wanderers defeated Oxford away, MK away, which are two grudge matches against Thames Valley opponents, and in that they managed to beat Peterborough, who came to Adams Park sitting in 4th. And we're thinking, wow, that's 3 wins on the bounce, 2 against local rivals and 1 in a playoff place. Wycombe are back, and then what happens? They go on a during the spell where they lost to Walsall in League 2 in the Cup, and that's probably the worst performance they've had all season. They drew with bottom of the table Morecambe at the time. They struggled against a newly promoted Port Vale team. So it's been very, very inconsistent. I think Gareth Ainsworth has even said that. So I think it's fair to say at the moment about a 5 out of 10 as we get to the halfway point. But Gareth Ainsworth has always said that he reckons once he gets his full squad back, come the second half of the season, there could be a very, very, very good promotion playoff push. Obviously, there's a long way to go until we get to the 6th of May. Anything can happen in that time. But Gareth Ainsworth's feeling confident. But in terms of the season so far, I would say it's been a bit hot and cold, very inconsistent.
Yeah, that's what I thought when I was doing my research. Very mixed bag. You know, getting some good results, as you said, but also some bad results. And getting knocked out of the Cups early doors against League 2 opposition is never great. What would you say then is the current mood between fans and Gareth Ainsworth? What's been said? How they feeling going into the second part of the season?
I think it's many things really. Some are very optimistic, thinking, right, okay, we've had our blip now. Some are a bit pessimistic, some are optimistic. And I guess it's just a case of taking every single game by game, really. The fixtures coming up for Wycombe are going to be quite tough, as Ipswich being league leaders. Wycombe have never defeated the Tractor Boys, so that's going to be very hard. But in order to be in and around the top 6, you need to get results pretty much off the top 6 to really showcase what you can do. So I guess after Saturday, depending on that result, I reckon that could really shape how the festive period goes, because there are going to be some very difficult fixtures for Wycombe in that time. They've got Bristol Rovers on Boxing Day. They've got Plymouth away from home as the last game of the calendar year, away at Peterborough on New Year's Day. So a real tough run of fixtures coming up for Wanderers. But going into the second half of the season, it does very much depend on what the form is based on that festive period going into January, how fans might feel, because as we said, it's been very inconsistent. You might go into a game feeling confident, thinking, oh, we're going to beat this team, and it hasn't happened. Or there have been times where Wycombe have got into a game not feeling confident and Wycombe have won, and then it's a case of, oh, okay, we could really kick on now. So I reckon after this Christmas and New Year period, we'll be able to get a real glimpse of what the season could lie ahead for the Chairboys.
Yeah, definitely. And as you said, and us fans have been saying, maybe the blip is now out of the way. Every team has a blip during the season, and hopefully it is, it's gone now, and then the rest of the season is all rosy and happy days. Let's talk about the players then, James. A lot of people know Wycombe's side, but you're the man who watches them week in, week out. This was the last 11 against Lincoln, which of course was a goalless draw at Sincil Bank. There's a few players there that I know of. Josh Scowen, a very good player, very solid player for this division. But take it away, my friend. Talk about the key players. And Sam Vokes is not in our 11, so expand on that as well.
So the game against Lincoln, I won't lie to you, defensively, it was brilliant from both sets of teams. Lincoln defended very well, Wycombe defended very well, but the game could have easily put you to sleep. Not a lot happened in the match at all. But in terms of the players that you mentioned there, Anis Mehmeti has been, without doubt, the Wycombe's player of the season. Collectively, across all competitions, he's played 24 times, he scored 8 goals, he's got numerous assists as well. There have been talks of him potentially going in January simply because of how well he has played so far this season, and he'll be probably the main player Ipswich will be looking at going into Saturday's game, because you can't get the ball off him. You really can't. And I did notice when we did go to Lincoln on Saturday, they were putting maybe 2 to 3 players on him, and he just couldn't get through. 1-on-1, fine. Putting 2 on him, he could try and do it, but putting 3 on him, he just couldn't find anywhere to move. So I don't know if that would be the tactic for Ipswich going into Saturday's game, but he has without doubt been the best player for Wycombe so far this season. Going at the back, Max Streck, he came into the side in August. He was signed after David Stockdale left to go to Sheffield Wednesday, and the Nathan Bishop deal for Manchester United fell through. So he's come into the squad, and he's been a revelation. He's been very, very good. 20 appearances, and I believe he's got 7 clean sheets in that time. And Jack Grimmer as well. Grimmer, he's in his 4th season now with Wycombe, and he's played very, very well in the last few games. Wycombe have actually kept 3 clean sheets in the last 4, and he's played a big part in that. So going into the game against Ipswich on Saturday, I wouldn't be surprised if it's an unchanged team, because this isn't the unchanged team from when Wycombe played Lincoln and previously against Portsmouth. So I wouldn't be surprised if Gareth Ainsworth keeps it for a 3rd game in a row without making any changes. But Ipswich are top of the table. They have played very, very well, and I wouldn't be surprised if they were to finish in the top 2 this season. I know it's a long way to go, but I really can't see them failing at this point. So maybe 1 or 2 changes could come in, but I wouldn't be surprised if it is a 3rd consecutive game with the same starting 11.
That's fair enough. And as I was saying, if talking about Sam Vokes quickly, because I know a lot of Town fans will know about him. You know, very experienced striker. Of course, when he signed, it was a very good signing for you guys. But yeah, he's not in the 11. We spoke off air about it. Now I'm going to get you to repeat that. Always the way in these sort of series. Like, we have a little chat in the green room, and they're like, actually, that's some great stuff. Can you say that again? So yeah, take it away.
So with Vokes, as mentioned before, he came into the squad last season. He was signed last season from Stoke, pretty much to be the replacement for Akinfenwa. They had a season together, but Vokes was very much the starter. He only missed 1 game, last season. Maybe not even now. He only came off the bench once last season. He started all the other league games whilst Bayo was coming off the bench. But this season, he hasn't really been at it. Last season, he scored numerous goals. Wycombe's player of the season. He scored 17 league goals, 18 collectively, which included 1 in the playoffs. This season, he's only got the 3 in 18. He did have a period at the start of the campaign where he was out injured, but since he's returned, he hasn't really been back to what we know he can do. So in a way, it wasn't really a shock to see him dropped from the team against Portsmouth, but it gave Brandon Hanlon an opportunity, and he's been out for a few months as well. He's only just returned in the last month or 6 weeks or so. So yes, Sam Vokes is very much the main man in that sense, because everyone knows who he is, an international goal scorer, European Championship goal scorer that we shouldn't forget with Wales back in 2016. But in the last few games, he really hasn't been at his very best. He's either been fed off scraps, or when the scraps have been there, he's not really utilised those crosses. So Handling coming in is just trying to freshen things up, trying to give Wycombe a different advantage, because with Hanlon and Vokes, they both play up top, but they are both completely different types of forward. Vokes is very much the classic number 9, big, strong, can hold it on his chest. He could beat a man with a header. He's your typical old-fashioned centre forward. Whilst Handling, he's a bit silky. He can dribble. He can get round a man. He can even play on the wing if needs be, or he could play up top. So it's just trying to be different up top, because Wycombe going into the Portsmouth game, they're 2 weeks without a match, and they lost to Cheltenham away 1-0, and it was an awful performance. Genuinely, it was probably one of the worst in the league this season. They didn't look like scoring at all. So Handlin's come in after a 2-week break, and in the last 2 games, Wycombe have picked up 4 points and not conceded any. So I personally can't see any changes being made to the side on Saturday. But with that being said, as we mentioned before off air, Gareth Ainsworth loves to keep his team news close to his chest. And there have been times where not just myself, but others have assumed that there'll be either no changes and many changes have been made, or many changes will be made and no changes have been made. So it's very much a lottery in that sense. But take nothing away from Sam Vokes. He's come into this Wycombe team and it's been a revelation. Last season, he was absolutely unplayable, the way he was beating defenders. And I vividly remember Gareth Ainsworth saying when he signed him, he said he couldn't get into Stoke's team, but he will certainly get into my team. And he's not proven, he's proven everyone right in the sense that he's a top quality striker this season. However, he has had the injuries and it just hasn't worked for him. But he has got 3 goals this season. One of them was in a win against Peterborough, which was probably one of Wycombe's best moments of the season so far, and a 3-1 win. So here's hoping that once all those fixtures do come in around the Christmas period, he'll be able to get some minutes and remind fans of how good he can be.
Yeah, we shall wait and see. Hopefully it's not this Saturday against Ipswich. Hopefully he'll bring his form later on, definitely. Now, James, we know a Gareth Ainsworth side. We know his football. But has much changed this season? You know, because we ain't got Akinfenwa anymore, we ain't got those sort of players. But shall we expect the normal?
Well, Wycombe have been labelled as this who fits team. Just do a 60-yard ball, knock it up top, and then they'll score. It hasn't really been like that in the last couple of weeks, especially against Portsmouth. Both of Wycombe's goals came on the ground. Gareth McCleary's goal, especially when Anis Mehmeti came through and laid it off to him, and Mehmeti's goal in that game was absolutely fantastic. So there is this perception that Wycombe are this, put it up to the top, let the so-called big man get onto it and just bundle it in. But that isn't really the case. Wycombe have scored some wonderful goals this season, and they are trying to get rid of this old narrative of, just lump it up top. They could play it around the field. They've got some incredibly wonderful attacking players in as we mentioned before, with Anis Mehmeti, Gareth McCleary. Gareth McCleary he's a Premier League player. He played in the Premier League with Reading and he knows how to beat a man. Brandon Handlin, he's very good as well. But in that, you've got to mix everything up. So you've got a player like Lewis Swing, and his distribution is fantastic. It really, really is. Alfie Mawson, again, a former Premier League player, once of Wycombe many years ago, his distribution is very, very good too. So whilst Wycombe do have that in their locker, we've seen it many times before how Wycombe can play it along the ground, and they have scored several good goals from it so far this season.
That's good to hear. Let's talk then, James, about how you're feeling ahead of the game. Of course, Town did the double over Wycombe last year, the 1-0 win at Portman Road. Of course, Kieran McKenna's first game in charge, and then the 4-1 win at Adams Park, which was a very good evening, a very cold evening, we were saying. But how are you feeling going into this one, my friend? Of course, Wycombe have never, as you mentioned, have never beaten Town. We've not had many meetings, but in the meetings we have had, it's been all Town. Of course, the 2 draws and then the 2 wins. But yeah, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling relatively confident. I mean, I touch wood. I feel like Wycombe have turned the corner. The Portsmouth win was very much a morale-boosting win, considering Portsmouth had only lost twice all season. I know they've drawn many, many games. And last week against Lincoln, whilst it wasn't the best of games, it was a very defensive display. We have to remember that Lincoln haven't lost at home all season, even though most of those results have ended in draws. So I like to think that Wycombe will put a good show up against Ipswich. It's going to be very, very tough, as we've already mentioned before. Ipswich are on top of the table, one of the favourites, if not the favourite, to return to the Championship this season. So I'm feeling relatively confident. I wouldn't be surprised if Ipswich were to potentially go 1-0 up or score. I can't see them not scoring at Adams Park on Saturday, but I'm feeling relatively confident. I reckon Wycombe will put in a good show considering the last 2 performances. But that's the thing; it depends on which type of Wycombe turns up. If it's the Wycombe that we've seen against Oxford, where they won 1-0, MK as well 1-0, Peterborough, Burton on the opening day of the season, I can really see Ipswich not struggling, but thinking, this is a lot tougher than what we expected. But if it's the Wycombe that we saw at home against Walsall, if it's the Wycombe that we saw against Cheltenham, then Ipswich could potentially have a field day. So it all depends on what type of Wycombe turns up. But with it being a bumper crowd, with the Portsmouth win being the last one at home prior to Saturday, and with it being the last home game before Christmas. I like to think that it will be a good showing from Wycombe on Saturday, and I reckon it will be. I wouldn't be surprised if several goals were scored.
I hope so, James. I hope so. We can end at the end of the game. We can go, yeah, that was a good game of football to get us ready for Christmas, definitely. But of course, more for town. But we shall see. I hope it's just an entertaining game for all the neutrals out there. But James, some great insight. Thank you very much for that. Any other business? Any other notes you want to mention?
Just for the fact that I just think it's going to be a fantastic game, in the sense that with all the town fans that are coming, I reckon it will be Wycombe's highest attended game of the season so far. So it's going to be very, very interesting in that sense, because obviously the entire of the away stand is filled, and then you've got parts of the Frank Adams stand, which is one of the main home stands, that's going to have Wycombe fans in it, as well as with one of the other stands as well. So it's going to be a real sort of horseshoe shape of Ipswich fans being there, which is very, very rare for Wycombe, because that rarely happens. I know it's happened once or twice when Sunderland have come to town. So to have that many Ipswich fans, well, opposition fans at Adams Park, on top of the noise the terrorists make, it's going to be, I reckon it's going to be a lively atmosphere, and I wouldn't be surprised if this would be Wycombe's highest attended game of the season. So, no, I'm looking forward to it. Last game before Christmas, and I'm hoping it's not going to be another 0-0 draw.
Oh yeah, please do not. We want to, of course, keep warm, so we want to make sure a lot of things happen. You know, the atmosphere, the game itself being on fire, because we don't want a freezing cold 0-0 draw. We want some good atmosphere and a good game of football. So yeah. Well, James, thanks for joining me. Thanks everyone for watching. Of course, if you are going to the game, enjoy. If you're not, make sure to look out all the content that we're bringing you. Of course, check out James's content as well, covering all things Wycombe Wanderers at the Bucks Free Press. And yeah, we'll see you next time in the Meet the Oppo series. Bye-bye for now.